Hello everybody, welcome back to another Books and Looks video. If you are returning and watching another one that you've seen before, thank you so much. That didn't make total sense, but whatever. Thank you so much for coming back. I really appreciate the repeat visits. I hope you're enjoying my videos. If you have seen lots of my videos, add a little comment below and tell me which one was your favorite and why. So did you like the book? Did you like the look? Did you like that it was longer, shorter, that it had spoilers, that it didn't have spoilers? Tell me what you like to see in my videos. I'd love some feedback and some comments on why you're a returning viewer. Maybe you're just my friend. I might appreciate that. If you are new here, I want to thank you so much for watching my video. Welcome. What I do here is I combine two of my favorite things, reading books and doing makeup, and I put them together in a get ready with me video / book review video. I hope you enjoy and are entertained, and we shall begin. My book this time it's called Murder, She Wrote series. I guess it's a series. I don't know. It's the only one I've ever seen. And it was called By the Time You Read This, I'll Be Gone. And I cannot remember the author's name, and I don't have the book with me. I left it in my classroom. But I will put it right here with the author's name and everything. I do apologize. But yeah, so I didn't really like this book. And let me tell you why. It was complicated. There were way too many subplots and side characters. It was just weird. So basically, it's the story of Beatrice, who goes by B. Fletcher, and it's a Murder, She Wrote series because she is Jessica Fletcher's like great niece or something. So there's a connection. It's a little like fan fiction side story thing. And Beatrice loves murder mysteries. She like takes after her aunt. She visits her aunt occasionally and like talks about stuff. And she has like a blog that she writes about like cold case murder mysteries or whatever. Whatever. That's just like a little sidebar. Well, she has this best friend whose name I also can't remember. I'm awful at this. If you know me in names. But I'll add it to here. I'll look it up and I'll add it. So she has this best friend, and she also goes to therapy because like her mother passed away like 5 or 6 years ago. They're all teenagers, by the way. Her mother passed away a few years ago. And so she's like kind of been in like this counseling, grief counseling, but then also just like life counseling. And her best friend is the son of like this really rich family. He's an only child. And they're like super strict, and he's like super stressed because like he has to get straight A's and he has to be successful in all of his sports and extracurriculars, and he has to like look perfect. And so like his parents are like overwhelming with the pressure, and he wants to go to therapy, but he's not allowed to go to therapy because of how that's going to look. So she decides to connect her therapist and her best friend and sit and have like this kind of secret meeting, which by the way, a therapist would never meet with a teenager without parental consent, but whatever. Well, maybe they would. I don't know. They are 17, so I don't know, maybe in the state, whatever. So they're going to meet up, and they're like texting each other, and she's like, okay, we're going to do this. He said he'll meet with you if you come. He has like a home office. He said he'll meet with you, but meet me at the Hollow, which is like this little patch in the woods that people hang out, like, you know, an open spot. And meet me here in a half an hour, and we'll walk over to his house together. But he doesn't show. The best friend doesn't show. And like all these weird thing happens. Like she thinks she hears stuff in the woods and like chases after. And then she meets these random kids that are like having a campfire near the building of like, they go to a private school. So they're like kind of near there. And they're hanging out and doing whatever. And she runs into them. She's like, oh my gosh, have you seen my friend? I heard him run through the woods. Which she doesn't know it was her friend. Like, she just heard footsteps and like voices off in the distance and went after it and assumed it was her friend, right? So then she meets these random kids that are just having a bonfire on the side of the school property, this private school. And they think they're out there because they're like working on this weird mystery game that their school puts together. Because, you know, that's what private schools do. They put together these weird mystery games for the students. And they think she's like an actor, part of this game, and it's all a thing. Turns out it's all true. So they decide to help her and like help her. They are just doing this game and they decide to help her because she's like, oh my gosh, my friend is missing. But they don't really help her. They have like the tiniest part in the story, so I don't even know, whatever. And so she starts investigating, like, where did her friend go? The parents are no help. And she starts realizing, like, oh my gosh, there's been 4 missing teenagers in the last year, all from the same neighborhood, my best friend's neighborhood. So she's like, something's fishy. And then there was like a homeowners association that is like real sketchy in this same neighborhood. So she thinks, oh, all of the missing kids, all 4 of the missing teenagers, their parents are part of the homeowners association. So she thinks something nefarious is going on. And then she also, there's like this urban legend of this girl who was murdered in like 20 years ago or 30 years, I guess like 20 years ago. And it was never solved, and like the whole community like set up all, that's where the homeowners association started from, was from this murder, because they're like, who did it? We don't know. So we need like this homeowners association to keep us safe. So she is like, starts putting the pieces together, and in the meantime she's trying to find her best friend. So this is all because her best friend disappeared, and she's like, all these people have disappeared. And then she like starts looking into like, she goes to the police, and for some reason, somehow, she gets into, like, the police archives and, like, looks up information about that murder from 20 years ago because she thinks it's connected somehow. Why she thinks it's connected, I don't know. But she finds out through her research, which she visits Jessica Fletcher, and she's like, well, just do some research, see what you can find out. So she figures out that the murder of this girl, this teenage girl from 20 years ago, wasn't actually a murder. She killed herself because her father, I'm sorry, I'm laughing, but she killed herself because her father made her break up with her boyfriend, and they weren't allowed to see each other anymore, so she killed herself. I'm not making light of suicide. I'm not making light of teenage emotional angst. I apologize for laughing. So she figures out that like that wasn't actually murder. It was death by suicide, and that there were people who knew it wasn't actually a murder, and they like all got paid off to be quiet because the family was embarrassed that the daughter did that. Like how embarrassing. So they decide to cover it up because they're super rich, and they like pay off the medical examiner. And B finds all of this out because she's like looking at old medical records, and there were like 2 files that said 2 different things, and she pieced it together. They paid off the medical examiner to say it was actually a murder, which stemmed into this whole thing. They started this like, neighborhood watch because they thought there was a murderer when there actually wasn't, which eventually turned into the homeowners association because, that happens. I don't know, maybe it does. It just seemed a little far-fetched to me. All right, so she figures all this out and then recognizes that the parents that knew that it wasn't a murder are the parents of all the missing kids today. So she's like, oh my gosh, somebody is doing to like these people who've been keeping the secret the same thing that happened, like they're getting rid of their kids as like punishment for keeping this secret. But who? So then she like is trying to figure this out, and she notices she's like being followed. The friends from the private school start doing some additional research because she thinks that the original boyfriend who couldn't be with the girl who wasn't murdered, she figures out that this kid went to the private school. So then she gets her friends to start researching like the school archives because, that's normal. Students can research the school archives, just like, let me just go research the school archives for you. Anyway, so they look into that, but while the one friend is looking, and she texts her, she's like, I think I found it out. I think I know who the boyfriend was. You're never going to believe who it is. So she is like riding her bike over there, and the like fire trucks start going by because the library caught on fire. Somebody torched the library. And she's like, oh my gosh, whoever this is doesn't want us to know who did it. And it's like, you know, this big mystery, like somebody's trying to keep us from finding out the truth. And is like will set fire to the school building to keep the information from getting out. And I'm like, okay, but the girl already, no, whatever. So she finds out that who this kid was, that she's like, these were his initials. Why? Okay, she left her phone in her room, so she shouldn't take a picture of it. Okay, sure. But like, you can't remember even vaguely what the name was or like when the guy graduated or anything. She's like, all I remember is his initials were this, and that afterwards he went to MIT for college. So she starts like with that and starts trying to figure out like, well, who's this person? And the whole time I'm like, what does any of this, like, you're trying to find your friend. How do you think this is going to help you figure out where your friend was? If you think he was kidnapped or murdered or whatever, how is like, whatever. But as it turns out, of course, it all connects. So she starts researching it, and then she starts to think, oh my gosh, this sounds a lot like my therapist. Yeah, her therapist. So she thinks her therapist is somehow involved because it's the same initials, and he went to MIT, blah, 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 blah. So she thinks it's her therapist. So she goes to her therapist's house and is like acting like she wants to talk about something important that's bothering her, anxiety, blah, blah, blah. But really she's like doing some recon. And then he like figures out that she's figuring things out. So he's like, all right, listen, I got some stuff to tell you. Yes, I went to that private school. Yes, I went to MIT. Yeah, you're finding stuff out, but it's not what you think. Just leave it alone. Everything's fine. Like, you're blah, 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 blah. But she's like, this is insane. Like, she thinks he might be a murderer or a kidnapper or something. So she continues to investigate. I guess I'm doing more browns, aren't I? I know I put a little bit of like a cranberry up there. I guess I'm doing browns. Okay. My huge, it's fine. So anyway, she is like, this is like close to the end of the book now, and I'm still just like, this is the problem I have with the book. There are so many subplots and so many things going on. There's the private school kids who are doing this weird mystery game. There's this thing about like where her father works and like how he works with chemicals somehow. He went to MIT also. There's the homeowners association thing. There's the murder mystery from 20 years ago that went unsolved, but she solved it really easily by realizing that it wasn't a murder at all, and they've just been keeping this secret for years. Then there's the whole thing of like, is her therapist actually a kidnapper / murderer? There's just like so much going on. And I'm like, how in the world is this all going to come together? But then the crazy thing is the twist that's coming up is also like way out of left field, where like, what does that have to do with anything? And how do all these pieces come together? I have no idea. So, okay. So as it turns out, the therapist is involved, but not at all like you might think. So, okay, so the therapist finally like comes clean and is like, no, it wasn't a therapist. She gets picked up by like this random girl, shows up and was like, get in the car. And, you know, the teenager's going to be like, okay, let me get in the car with this random like 20-some-year-old woman. Okay. But she does. She gets in the car with this random woman, and this girl, because she's like 20, drives her to this old farm. And then this like unlocks a core memory of this recurring dream that she's been having, which also, that was like another subplot. Like, she keeps having this recurring dream about visiting this old farm with her best friend, and her best friend being like, oh, I need to go into the big barn. My grandfather's in there. And he goes in there, and then his grandfather ends up like beating him up for going in there because there's this big secret in there. And then this other random person comes out of nowhere and tries to protect them. And as it turns out, oh, by the way, there was another really random subplot. The best friend's grandfather, turns out he was like a serial killer, that like he started out to be part of like this anti-government organization and was like building bombs in his barn. And he did it as like a protest thing, but then he like really enjoyed it and started like killing random people because he thought they were bad. And so he ended up getting arrested, and there's this whole side story. So like her best friend not only is from an abusive household, but his grandfather is a known serial killer, domestic terrorist. So, yeah. So anyway, she gets in the car with this random girl who takes her to a farm, and it unlocks this core memory and reminder of this recurring dream. The farm is her best friend's grandfather's farm where he used to do all these bombs, and she visited there one time and has this recurring dream, and that's where this girl takes B. So she's like, oh my gosh, I'm at my best friend's grandfather's farm. What is happening? I'm forgetting to do my makeup. Sorry. So she shows up there, and is this? No, this is an eyeliner. That was a brow pencil. That would have been interesting. This is my brow pencil, or my eyeliner, not my brow pencil. Yeah. Okay, so as I was saying, she shows up there and is like, what is happening? I am almost out. Awesome. It's just going so great. So she shows up, and who walks out the front door of this house? Can you guess? It's her best friend. He didn't get kidnapped. He wasn't murdered. He ran away. And who else walks out of the house with him but her therapist? He was in on it all along. Her best friend has been seeing this therapist for years, secretly against his parents' knowledge, which is totally plausible because therapists do that all the time, right? Secretly treat children from the age of like 13 to 17 without parental consent or knowledge. Yep, that's totally plausible, but I digress. So the kid ran away, and he didn't tell her for obvious reasons, like he didn't want people to know. But apparently he left clues all over the place. He's like, did you find my phone? She's like, or my messages? And she's like, what? I left my phone for you in the woods when we were supposed to meet in the middle of the night with like some clues on it. And I also left a note for you in that little like cabin in the woods. You didn't find it? And she's like, no. So he's like, well, I left you clues. I thought for you to figure out where it was and find me. And after like 2 weeks when you didn't, that's when I sent my friend to go get you and bring you here because I knew you'd be so worried, and you never quit looking for me if you thought I was in danger. And she's like, well, yeah, you're my best friend. And as it turns out, all of the missing teenagers over the years were not, in fact, kidnapped like the parents were saying, or murdered or whatever. They all ran away or were like sent away to like a teen boot camp bad behavior thing. But the parents didn't want the general community to know that their kids were so bad they had to send them away / ran away because the parents were like all abusive and crap. It had nothing to do with the murder from years ago. So like why was that in it at all? I don't know. But it had nothing to do with that like she thought. Like all that research she did and all the stuff she found out about how the homeowners association stemmed from this murder that wasn't a murder, and how all of the people who were there when it happened and knew the truth, now their kids are the ones that were... Nope, not at all. It just so happened that they were like jerks back then, and they're jerks now as adults to their kids, and now their kids are either all being sent away or running away. And the best friend was like, when my grandfather died, he willed all of this property to my father, who didn't want to have anything to do with it because, you know, like he was a serial killer and everything. Understandable. But the therapist bought it because it was like really cheap or whatever. He bought it because he wanted to build a refuge for runaway teens who were trying to escape abusive parents. Okay? And when he was working with all of these kids who have run away from their parents, and he's helping them run away from their parents, from their abusive homes, and giving them this like halfway point where they can like get some refuge and a place to like, you know, whatever. And I'm just like, that's not how it works. A therapist cannot do that, would not do that. And then again, like this whole side story of like the private school that was doing like this big mystery game with all the students and like the library got burned down by somebody whenever the girl found information about, like, what does that have anything to do with anything? Oh, it does turn out that, like, her therapist did go to the private school and he won the mystery game one year. What that has to do with anything, I don't know. Maybe it was explained in the book and I just didn't get it, but I was confused. I was like, what? There were so many things in the story where I was like, what does this have to do with anything? Like, that, all right, so that's basically how it ends. She finds out and she's like, well, he's still the best. I can't even explain this because it was so weird and so confusing, and there were so many subplots going on, and there was just so much happening. And then there was also, like, her other friends were mad at her because she was obsessed with her best friend and, like, was stopped hanging out with the rest of them when they would invite her because she was just, like, too busy trying to solve this mystery and find her friend. Because, you know, like, why is that there? Whatever. So, anyway, that's the end of the story. She finds out that her best friend wasn't kidnapped. He ran away intentionally with the help of her therapist. They've been lying to her all these years. He knows her best friend. He's been helping him for years. It's so weird. It's so weird. I don't know. And they're like, well, you're so good with mysteries. We knew you'd figure it out, but I guess you just didn't find the clues I left for you. So we decided to send this girl here who was one of the other missing teenagers who ran away like 3 years ago or whatever. She was part of, like, this whole thing, and she was the first one that the therapist saved from the abusive life or whatever. And so she had to go get her and be like, I gotta take you to this place because otherwise you're never gonna stop looking and you're gonna ruin it for the rest of us. Like, just all this weird stuff. Like, what? 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 And there was just too much going on, and I was so confused. And, like, there were so many different subplots that each one could have been its own separate story. Like, the thing about the school with the mystery, like, that could have been its own story. Like, those characters could have been their own story of, like, trying to solve this mystery that was, like, a game at the school. Like, that could have been a really cool story in and of itself. Why was it this random little subplot? Like, she could have just researched school archives herself. If she can go into the police archives, she could get into the school archives. We didn't need any of that. The whole homeowners association that was stemmed from this murder that wasn't a murder and how all their kids were missing, like, that was unnecessary. It could have just been the kids who ran away from their homes and were connected with this one person who was helping them. The whole subplot of, like, the grandfather being a murderer and, like, that's how the house came to be. It could have just been a random house that the therapist bought, and like the recurring nightmares, like, it was just too much. It was so confusing. It was too much. And, like, there wasn't a big twist where it, like, all connected and made sense. Not even a little bit. And also, like, why wasn't Jessica Fletcher should have had a bigger part. Like, if it was a Murder, She Wrote inspired novel, then either it should have been much closer to how those shows worked, like formulaic for the show, so that there was actually a connection between the two, or maybe Jessica Fletcher should have had a bigger role, because literally her role was B went to visit her 2 times and was like, this is what's happening and I don't know what to do, and Jessica was like, well, maybe you should just do some research, go to the library, see what you can figure out. Like, what? Why Jessica Fletcher should have been like, oh, well, look at this detail right here. That looks important. Look into that. Because that's, like, how she worked in the show. It wasn't that great of a book. I'm kind of glad I don't remember the author's name because I feel like I'm bashing her and talking about how bad of a book she wrote. It wasn't that bad. But it wasn't that great. Yeah. So, there's something in my eyeball. It's going to be a good day. I already have something in my eyeball. Anyway, I digress. Honestly, I wish I never read it. I wish I could have my time back. It didn't pique my interest very much at the beginning because it took a long time to get to the kidnapping. But then once the kidnapping happened, I was like, okay, this is going to get interesting. And it did for a little bit. And then the author brought in the private school students and this other mystery, and I was like, okay, this is gonna connect somehow. And then like all these other subplots coming in, like she starts investigating the murder from 20 years ago that wasn't a murder. And then there was, one of the private school kids dated a girl. I don't have any lipstick again. Seriously? All right. I'll be right back. And I'm back. Okay, so just finishing up, like, it was too much. It was too many subplots, too confusing. Oh, yeah, I was talking about the other random subplot. The one kid who went to the private school, one of the missing teenagers was his girlfriend. And it turned up that she was found dead. She drowned in the lake. So, like, of the missing teenagers, like, the one drowned. It was they figured out it was like an accidental drowning or whatever. And then the one was like from a couple years ago, and it was the girl who came to help her. And then two of them weren't actually missing. The parents just didn't want people to know that they were sent away to one of those schools, like a discipline school or whatever. So it was like, it didn't even turn out like she thought there were like 4 missing kids and there was a kidnapper or some serious thing happening. My lipstick just fell, whatever. And that wasn't the case at all. Like, there was just way too much going on. Oh, and then there was a cop that was like, she went to the police about her missing friend and they were like, yeah, okay, like, we all know you. Like, we're not going to listen to you. And so they didn't investigate it, but at one point, a cop came to her house and was, like, questioning her, and then later, that same cop was like, you don't remember, like, after the fact, like, in plain clothes, was like, you don't remember me, do you? She's like, no. And then, like, there was something to do with him. He was somehow involved, too, but I don't remember how, because it was so random. Like, there were just too many little things, and they didn't really connect in the end, and it was just... No, thank you. No, thank you. I do not recommend. I give it like a 3 out of 10. It's really bad. I'm sorry. I wish I liked it. I wanted to like it. It was too confusing. The characters were all super stereotypical. They were like very stock characters. They weren't dynamic. They weren't like nobody... It was just, I didn't like it. Sorry. So anyway, that's the end of that. I think this is the book that I liked the least of all. Well, there was the one book that I abandoned, and the one book, Jennifer, that I thought was like cheesy. It wasn't bad. It was just cheesy. This book, it was just all over the place. I can't. Anyway. Yeah, let me know if you read it or think you might want to read it. I know I had lots of spoilers in there, and I basically said it was awful, so maybe you want to read it. I don't know. Everybody has different tastes, so don't take my word for it. Maybe check it out for yourself. Maybe it's a series, and I started in the middle. I don't know. Anyway, thank you for watching. This is my look. Yeah, it is what it is. I didn't do anything super special, but I do really love this lipstick. It dries out my lips a little bit, but whatever, it's fine. Just put some chapstick on. Comment down below if you think this book sounds interesting or if you like my look today. And like I always say, please make fun book recommendations or look recommendations. I love to get comments and likes and subscribe and share and comment and do all the things to support my channel. I appreciate you. I appreciate everything that you do, and I hope you come back and watch more videos. And in the meantime, I hope you have a wonderful everything. And as always, stay beautiful inside and out. Mwah. Bye.